Ever wondered why you walk a certain way in a museum, pause at specific moments, or feel drawn toward certain artworks? That's no coincidence. Iconic museums like the Louvre and the Met use architectural design to quietly direct your journey, your focus, and your emotional response. Ever feel like a museum visit is pre-orchestrated? You're right. Before you choose a gallery, before you stop in front of a single artwork, the museum has already begun guiding you, not with words, but with space. Floor plans are more than navigation tools. They are deliberate narrative devices, quietly shaping how you move, where you look, and when you pause. Think of that familiar moment. You enter a museum planning to wander freely, yet somehow you follow the same path as everyone else. You slow down at the same thresholds. You're drawn toward certain rooms without knowing why. That subtle pull isn't coincidence, it's design. In this journey, we'll uncover how museums use architecture as a curatorial compass, guiding your gaze long before you realize you're being led. Architectural choreography, the Louvre's grand deception. The Louvre doesn't begin with art. It begins with orientation, or rather, disorientation by design. You descend beneath the glass pyramid and arrive in a vast, circular underground hall. From here, everything feels open, multiple wings, multiple choices, freedom. Yet this openness is the first sleight of hand. The space is radial, not neutral. Your body is gently pulled toward certain exits, your eye drawn along visual axes that promise something important ahead. From the pyramid, the flow subtly favors the Dinan wing. Signage grows more insistent, crowds thicken in one direction. The Carousel du Louvre acts like a narrative funnel, compressing movement and heightening anticipation. You are no longer wandering, you are being carried. As paths converge, bottlenecks appear. Narrow corridors, sudden turns, brief moments of compression. Psychologically, this does two things. First, it builds expectation. Something must be worth this effort. Second, it establishes hierarchy. When you finally reach the Mona Lisa, the density of bodies and the framed sightline confirm its status before you even see the painting clearly. The artwork arrives pre-crowned, but the choreography doesn't end there. After the climax, the Louvre offers release. Side corridors open. Unexpected staircases appear. These hidden exits quietly redirect exhausted visitors away from the epicenter. Some paths lead toward calmer, deeply significant collections. Others drift almost imperceptibly toward cafes and gift shops, placed precisely where attention wanes and rest feels justified. Nothing here is accidental. The Louvre's floor plan operates like a well-rehearsed ballet. Entry, build-up, climax, dispersal. You think you chose your route. In reality, the museum guided your steps, paced your emotions, and edited your memory of the visit. Once you see the choreography, the deception becomes visible, and the Louvre reveals itself not just as a palace of art, but as a master storyteller in stone. Subliminal sightlines, the Guggenheim spiral story. If the Louvre persuades, the Guggenheim commands. Frank Lloyd Wright's spiraling ramp removes the illusion of choice entirely. There are no branching corridors, no competing paths, no accidental discoveries. One ramp, one direction, one story unfolding as you move. From the moment you enter, your body is enlisted into a slow ascent, a continuous incline that regulates pace, breath, and attention. This architecture enforces sequence. Each artwork appears in a prescribed order, calibrated to the gentle curve of the wall and the subtle tilt of the floor. You cannot skip ahead without effort. You cannot double back without resistance. The museum behaves less like a building and more like a reel of film, advancing frame by frame. The incline itself matters. Moving upward changes perception. Time stretches. Fatigue accumulates just enough to encourage pauses. Those pauses are anticipated. Benches, widen curves, and softened sightlines appear exactly when the body needs rest, synchronizing physical rhythm with curatorial intent. At the heart of it all is the open atrium. Unlike traditional museums that isolate rooms, The Guggenheim keeps everything in visual conversation. As you walk, you constantly glimpse past and future. Works you've already seen hover below. Pieces yet to come peek from above. These vertical sight lines collapse linear time, inviting reflection and comparison. The narrative reinforces itself through memory and anticipation. The overlooks are not incidental viewpoints, they are punctuation marks, moments where the visitor steps out of the sequence just long enough to understand it. You see yourself inside the story, a moving figure within a larger composition. The Guggenheim's brilliance lies in its honesty. It does not pretend to offer freedom. It offers immersion. The building doesn't ask where you want to go. It tells you when to look, when to pause, and when to move on. Here, architecture is not a backdrop for art. It is the curator, quietly spiraling the visitor through a story that cannot be read any other way. Monumental narratives. The National Museum of China's scripted ascent. The National Museum of China does not subtly guide. It declares, standing opposite Tiananmen Square, the building announces its role before you enter. Scale is the first message. The museum stretches horizontally like a state manuscript written in stone, signaling that what lies inside is not a collection of objects, but an official narrative of civilization. Inside, the choreography is vertical and ceremonial. Visitors are drawn into vast entrance halls that function like ideological antechambers. These spaces slow you down. They recalibrate posture and pace. You do not drift here, you proceed. The floor plan relies on grand axial progression. Major permanent exhibitions unfold in a largely linear sequence, especially those narrating Chinese history from ancient civilization to the modern nation-state. This is not optional wandering. The architecture favors continuity, accumulation, and inevitability. Each gallery builds upon the last, reinforcing a sense of historical ascent rather than fragmentation. Wide corridors and high ceilings reduce intimacy. Individual objects matter less than collective meaning. You are encouraged to read history at scale, to absorb patterns rather than dwell on anomalies. Benches and pauses are sparse in key historical sections, subtly sustaining forward momentum. Reflection is allowed, but never too long. Sightlines here are ideological tools. Long views across galleries align dynasties, revolutions, and reforms into a single visual argument. Moments of openness between sections act as breath marks, not detours. The museum carefully controls when comparison is possible and when focus must remain singular. Temporary exhibitions and side galleries do exist, but they are spatially secondary. Reaching them often requires intentional deviation, a quiet signal about what is central and what is supplementary. The main narrative remains dominant, unavoidable, and reinforced by repetition of scale and symmetry. Exits return visitors through expansive transitional zones, where national symbolism, gift shops, and reflective displays converge. The journey ends not with ambiguity, but with consolidation. The story feels complete, authoritative, and closed. The National Museum of China's floor plan operates less like a map and more like a script. It doesn't ask visitors to interpret history. It invites them to walk through a carefully ordered vision of it, one monumental step at a time. Beyond the blueprints, your next museum. Adventure museums don't just display stories, they stage them. Every ramp, axis, bottleneck, and overlook you've seen is proof of one thing. Floor plans are powerful narrative tools. They decide what feels monumental, what feels secondary, when you slow down, and when you move on. Long before a label explains meaning, the building has already suggested how you should feel. This guidance is rarely visible, but it is always active. Every museum journey begins long before the first artwork. As we've seen, museum floor plans are not neutral backdrops. They are quiet storytellers. They guide your steps, frame your gaze, slow you down, or rush you forward. Without saying a word, they shape what feels central, what feels peripheral, and what stays with you long after you leave. This is the hidden layer of the museum journey. So, on your next visit, try something different. Don't just look at the art. Watch how the building moves you. Notice where your path narrows, where it opens, where you're invited to pause, and where you're gently pushed onward. Ask yourself not only what am I seeing, but why am I arriving here this way? That question turns every museum into an expedition. Now we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever felt guided, rushed, or unexpectedly captivated by a museum space? Share your own museum journey moments in the comments. What did you notice once you started paying attention? If you enjoy exploring museums beyond the obvious, subscribe to Museum Odyssey and follow the Museum Journeys playlist. Every artwork has a story, every museum has a path, and every journey leaves traces.